All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good buddy Chris Faraone. Chris is a journalist for the Boston Phoenix, which you can find at thephoenix.com. He is the author of the book 99 Nights with the 99%. You can also find him on Twitter at Faraone. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Always a pleasure, man. We get to really hash it out.
All right, so Chris, you have a great article up at the Phoenix. Phoenix is normally actually pretty short stories. This is a long story, but it's a long read, but it's a great read. It's entitled "The Trials of Nadia Naffe." If listeners aren't aware or don't remember who she is, who exactly is Nadia Naffe?
Well, Nadia Naffe, I guess, in pop culture or in pop political culture, is probably best known as the former associate of James O'Keefe, the shock videographer. She did a bunch of stings with him, and then, and we'll get to this, but there was an incident in which she alleges O'Keefe drugged her in his barn in suburban New Jersey. So to those on the internets out there, that would be known as the rape barn, though there was no rape alleged. But that was there were a couple of headlines that ran with that, including on Gawker. So Nadia Naffe is someone who really was around during the hot moments of James O'Keefe, but I really decided to look into her bigger story, where she comes from. Who is this woman?
So let's talk about that. Where exactly? She's from Florida originally, but how did she actually get involved and tied into the giant O'Keefe/Breitbart empire? Yeah,
so Nadia is a young African American woman. A very attractive, pretty black woman. She's born in 1978. She is a fourth-generation Floridian, hard worker. She got married young and then divorced. And around that time, it was about 2001 in Tampa. And she was, just going through this situation with her now former husband. And it was while Terry Schiavo was going on, while the Terry Schiavo controversy was popping in Tampa. Mm-hmm. Before 9/11, people tend to forget now that's all anybody cared about. So
right, exactly.
So she gets really politically activated, along with some other friends. Revives her school's GOP, Young Republican group. So, this is at the University of Tampa. From there, ends up, she's a mover and shaker. She does well. She meets Jeb Bush, Katherine Harris, climbs the ladder really quickly, to the point where right after graduation in 2003, she gets a job with the Bush Cheney campaign as a field organizer for about a dozen counties. And that ends up going south. She ends up complaining to the Equal Opportunity Commission about Equal Employment Opportunity Commission about race job assignments that are based just on her race. So, she argued that they were sending her out just to do outreach with black and minority groups. And she gets fired as a result. So she's kind of spurned by this GOP that she'd come to love over, from 2000 to 2003. And after that, she kind of falls out of politics. That lawsuit goes on until about 2006. She receives a settlement, an undisclosed settlement from the GOP, the state GOP, and the Bush Cheney campaign.
Right.
And then let's fast forward to 2009. I mean, I think we'll have to set. This is an amazingly complex story, but let's just set the scene. 2009, James O'Keefe's on top of the world.
Yeah.
So Acorn had just happened, and by that I mean, of course, James O'Keefe, with a young activist named Hannah Giles. And she was famously dressed as a prostitute, and they went into Acorn offices across the country, and they got a lot of people saying a lot of stupid things. And as a result, Acorn within a year was defunded within a month was defunded by Congress. And this is an organization that does endless work for poor people, oppressed people, getting people to the polls, get out the vote efforts. So, in the wake of Obama, this was, Acorn was really, I don't have to tell anyone who listens to your show, a right-wing member. So, James O'Keefe comes out as the king. Mm-hmm. And Nadia ends up meeting him. She this kind of showed her there's a young energy, in the conservative movement. So, she's not alone. There are a lot of people who came out, not just older Tea Partiers, but young people who saw excitement in this. And she was, one of the first in line. And within a month of meeting O'Keefe, she was she was going across the country with him. She was going to L.A. to infiltrate Congresswoman Maxine Waters' office. She was here in Boston, where I am, during the Scott Brown, Martha Coakley election. She was looking for, John Fund from Fox News had, I guess, given O'Keefe a tip, and we now all know all of this through emails, that black and brown people, quote unquote, were being brought to the polls, but we're going to be brought to the polls by, from poll to poll, and, all this kind of crazy right-wing voter fraud that they thought was going on. Nadia was sent here to do some undercover work, and she turned up nothing. And she was still working for O'Keefe at the time. But that was one of many failed missions, I would say.
And so she's right in the thick of O'Keefe's group, and they're trying to make all these type of videos, most of which end up being ridiculous and failing, and also it's kind of goes without saying that O'Keefe's videos are off most of the time, heavily edited and actually cut out parts that make the subjects appear better than they actually are. They're very obviously tilted with an agenda, but right. So she's with O'Keefe. She also at this time also forms a friendship with Andrew Breitbart as well at this time. Right.
So Nadia is, she's really cool. I've spent a lot of time interviewing her. She's smart, friendly. She's cool to hang out with. She smokes cigars. Her and Breitbart smoke cigars. She was, right off the bat, she was back in it, and she was hanging out with the All-Stars, hanging at Americans for Prosperity luncheons in New Hampshire during the, in the lead up to the election, really rolling top dollar. And, there's a lot of money being thrown around over there in that side. Keith was well funded. He was flying Nadia where she had to go and do these so-called sting operations. I should also know O'Keefe's enterprise is called Project Veritas. So that was that's who Nadia was really working for and doing this work for. And then it all unfolds in it's October 2010, and what is now will forever be known as the Barn Incident.
Right. When, so what is she? So this is. She is supposed to be doing a sting in New York City against NYU, against this horrible professor that James O'Keefe hates at NYU, supposedly. Right. And what actually? So lay that whole thing out. What exactly happened? How did she end up at this barn in New Jersey when she was supposed to be in Manhattan at NYU? How did this whole thing go down?
So a few weeks prior to the barn incident, she O'Keefe's sting, and some people have probably seen this, was called "To Catch a Journalist." And of course, what does this mean, to catch a liberal journalist? O'Keefe was allegedly convinced that at journalism schools, big-time journalism schools like NYU and Columbia, that the only thing anybody was doing there was indoctrinating the students to write articles that will get people to vote for Obama.
Clearly, obviously, that's what's happening.
Yes, clearly, and as any journalism graduate will tell you. So the guy, the professor's name is Charles Seife, S-E-I-F-E, pretty well-known science writer. I believe at the time he was a dean at NYU School of Journalism, the Carter Institute, I believe it's called. And a year earlier, Professor Seife had seen an incident on television where James O'Keefe, and this is even more bizarre, had tried to lure CNN reporter Abby Boudreau onto a boat that had dildos and all these sexual devices on it. It was this failed plot. So Charles Seife had seen this kind of James O'Keefe disaster, and in it saw that he had a nonprofit entity, Project Veritas. So Seife did a little espionage of his own, as I wrote. He only to discover that O'Keefe's 501c3 was BS, or at least it hadn't been approved yet. But he was going around collecting money as if it had been. So fast forward a year, Nadia arrives in New York City. They're going to infiltrate NYU, and O'Keefe's saying, "This guy Charles Seife is a racist. He's a bigot. You really need to do this, Nadia." And then Nadia spends a day with him, and she discovers, this guy is totally nice. He's the last thing he is a racist. And then she had known that he had really looked at James O'Keefe's agenda here with the nonprofit, and she asked O'Keefe, she said, "Are you really using me just to exact revenge over here. And that's when the relationship started to sour a little. So on the next time she came into New York to complete the NYU investigation, if you will use those words,
yeah,
she's picked up at the Newark. James O'Keefe is from New Jersey, so she's picked up at the Newark Amtrak station. And instead of going to a hotel like the time before when she had her own hotel room, O'Keefe drives her to a barn in a really nice neighborhood called Westwood, which is where James O'Keefe is from. And it's this, you get there and it's this remodeled barn, and it's like O'Keefe's headquarters. It's his office / bedroom. And, they hang out for a little bit, but she's tired and wants to go to sleep. And they had picked up a 6-pack of beer. And next thing you know, she says that they get in a little argument because she was on a phone call with another guy. He didn't make exactly a romantic pass at her, but he, according to Nadia's account, he got frustrated when she was on the phone with another man, and he stormed off. And after he stormed off, she says that she became woozy and was crawling around. And Nadia's laid this all out in an explicit 1,400-word letter that she ended up releasing in the aftermath of this. But this is kind of like the incident that, really it all centers around. This is kind of like the breaking point. And after this, everything just falls apart. And it's not just with the media characters involved. It's with this whole underworld of, right versus left and just smear culture and some, it's really some of the, the nastier elements of the blogosphere, which I'm sure people like you and I are more than familiar with, but those on the outside of that world are, I've gotten a million emails and texts and stuff about how horrified people are by the utter depravity throughout this story.